Well, some issues are emerging in Japan which will be making Australian beef producers, processors and exporters very nervous. Japan is about to start talks with the United States about lifting the age for American beef imports. It's currently 24 months, but looks like going to 30 months. The age restriction was applied for the resumption of imports after the BSE scare in America. Now, this will put a rocket under American beef to Japan and simultaneously put the brakes on Australian exports. Now, what does this mean in tonnage terms? In 2010, US beef exports to Japan were around 160,000 tonnes. When the age limit for beef is lifted, that tonnage will rise to 215,000 tonnes and probably more. It's still a long way from the tonnage America used to ship in the early part of the last decade, and that increase will come from either decreased local production caused by the recent earthquake, or it'll take the place of Australian imports. Also an issue in Japan, beef consumption there is flat. In the year 2000, it was 5.9 kilos per person. It's currently around just 4.7 kgs. Now, last week's sale yard action was dominated by offerings where the quality was described as excellent. The warmer weather on the back of the good season has seen some terrific grass-fed cattle on offer. Once again, the trend is for restocking. Steer and bullock prices went up in response to tight supplies, and I've put up the prices for this week of last year. As you can see, every indicator is up on 2010, some quite substantially. The exception is the cow indicator, which has almost flatlined over the past 12 months or so. And the live trade is still playing catch-up, but there's a price issue emerging in Indonesia. Lot feeders are complaining that the new regulations, which are now largely in place, have pushed beef prices to the point where there is now substantial buyer resistance at the retail level in Indonesia. But prices across the north continue with a very solid platform. Steers $2.20 and 15 cents less for heifers. And again, I've put last year's price in the graphic. No wonder Indonesian buyers are fizzing a little. And before I leave beef, Australia's biggest beef producer, AACo, has told Landline there is no truth to the rumour circulating across the north that it's set to pull the pin on the much-talked-about Darwin meatworks. AACo boss David Farley issued a statement to us which read in part, "The company is continuing to liaise with relevant territory and federal government authorities and other stakeholders to pursue regulatory, funding and other requirements." I think that means it's going ahead. Moving on to sheep now, and once again, it's the restockers leading the way. The availability of feed and the forecast of a good season ahead is all the encouragement needed by most producers, and if you want to sell, prices have been pretty solid. Our lamb indicator fell a fraction and mutton fell 22 cents on the back of a lift in supply. The Weekly Times reports that First Cross Border Leicester ewe sold at Narracourt last week, $190 up to $310. Great prices. Now, the news is not so good with grains. American wheat exports are down 50% on this time last year. Egypt continues to buy Ukrainian and Russian wheat, and America doesn't even bother to tender, such as the price advantage for the Black Sea ports. Back home, the harvest continues with some significant downgrades expected because of the widespread rain. That applies especially to Western Australia. The ASX reports WA wheat for January has lifted a fraction in response to the downgrades, while wheat on the East Coast continues to slide. Here's the graph of East Coast wheat for January 2012 delivery. It peaked close to $350 a tonne earlier this year, but has been mostly on a downhill run ever since. Spot prices haven't changed a great deal. Wheat is reacting to the downgrade question, and reports would indicate an extremely healthy sorghum crop is on the way. Now to the centre of the action, Chicago, and it's here the world macroeconomic issues make the real difference. Wheat and corn both fell. The corn export figures out of America are not that much better than wheat, but the losses were limited because of tight supply. And soybeans slumped on the back of fading interest from China. That soy price would be close to a 12-month low. There was a significant cotton move. America had its best weekly export of cotton since 2008, and this appeared to put a floor in the market. So cotton lifted more than a cent, while also in New York, sugar traded on either side of unchanged. Finally, to wool, where the market did pretty well considering the ructions in Italy, one of Australia's major wool buyers. The Eastern market indicator did fall, but not much compared to the broader equity spectrum. 1,219 cents was the week-ending figure, a drop of 5 cents, or about 0.4%. Now that figure is almost 20% up on this week last year. And that's the Landline check on prices.